Hi, welcome to part 1 of our system design interview prep series. Today we are starting at the very beginning and we are going to look at a single server setup. By the end of this lesson, you will understand how a user's request gets from their device to your server, how the data looks like, and the basic trade-offs of running everything on a single machine. By the way, we are using the system design interview book for this series, which is written by Alexiu. And so let's jump in. Think of a single server setup as everything running on one computer. It can be your web app, your API, your database, or even the cache. All of it will live on a single machine. This is how most of the projects will start. They will start in a simple, cheap, and easy to manage way, but also it will be the foundation that you will build on when you scale it later. So first, think of a single server setup as everything running on one single computer. And we have to identify how the users can reach your service. In this image, we can see a simple setup of a single server system. So they use a domain name. The users will use a domain name like api.mysite.com. Humans can usually remember the names, not numbers like IP addresses. So the domain name system is an easier way to handle this. So the DNS or the domain name system translates this name into an IP address. The DNS is usually third-party service and you don't typically run it on our servers. So once the client has the IP address, the DNS server sends back the IP address. The request flow will look like this. The client asks for api.mysite.com, DNS sends back the IP address, and once again the client can request that IP address, whatever that is there in that particular IP address from the server. With that IP, the client gets the HTTP, sends the HTTP request directly to the web server, and the web server responds by processing that request and returning an HTML page or a JSON response, which the client can then render using their browser. So those are the 4 steps: the domain name, IP lookup, HTTP request, and the server response. That is the basic life cycle of a web request in a single server architecture or a single server setup. Now let's talk about where traffic comes from. Usually it has 2 sources. They are the web applications and the mobile applications. So those are the basic client devices. Web applications will use server-side languages like Java, Python, or Node.js to handle the business logic and storage. Mobile apps will also communicate over HTTP to your APIs. They commonly use JSON to exchange data because it is lightweight and also it is easy to pass. To give an example of a JSON API response, you can see a sample JSON format here where the user imagine a simple GET request where we want to retrieve the users and a particular user with ID 12. So this will be the sample response that we will get. So in JSON, everything is managed using key value pairs. That structured JSON is easy for both web and mobile clients to parse and display. And next, let's cover the trade-offs in a single server approach. There are pros and cons. So for the pros, it will be a simple setup, which is inexpensive. Debugging will be straightforward because everything is in one place. Deployments will be simpler and you will also have fewer moving parts to manage, right? And for the cons, it is a single point of failure. If the server goes down, the entire system will be going down. The capacity is also limited by the machine's CPU, memory, disk, and the network bandwidth. Running web database and cache on the same box can cause resource contention. As the traffic grows, it becomes harder to scale without re-architecturing this. So understanding these trade-offs is really important. Early on, a single server setup is often the best choice. It lets you to validate your idea and iterate quickly. But as you get real users, you will need to split the responsibilities across multiple machines. And then the load balancing comes in separate. We have to separate the databases and to introduce caching and redundancy. We are going to look into those in the upcoming sections. And to summarize this chapter, we need to know that a single server setup runs everything on one machine. The DNS turns domain names into IP addresses, and when the client uses this IP address to send the HTTP request, the client will receive back the HTML or JSON response from the server. Starting simple is practical, but single servers have clear limits that you will solve in later parts of this series. So that's it for part 1. And in the next episode, we'll take the first step beyond a single server setup. So if you have any questions about any of these steps that we covered in this one, drop them in the comments and I'll try to explain them in the next video. Thank you and see you next time.